Hello out there, Facebook land. Hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. I hear that you're here today because you want to learn what you can do to help the birds. And you happen to be in luck because there are just so many things that you can do. Uh, I'm going to start with the basics, and that is my name is Rachel, and I've been volunteering with Tri State for somewhere around 15 years now. And if you have any questions today during our Facebook Live presentation, my friend and fellow volunteer Marion will be doing her best to answer them for you. So in case you don't know what Tri-State does, we focus on humane research and also rescue and rehabilitation and then eventual release, hopefully, of our native wild birds. We are actually part of a really long tradition of helping our native wild birds. And that tradition started in the 1970s for Tri-State. But before that even, our ancestors and our forefathers realized that bird populations were not doing so well. And that was back in the early 1900s. And in fact, some birds, unfortunately, even became extinct back then. So our forefathers had the forethought to want to help. And so they created a law, and it's called the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And that law actually still stands today. Unfortunately, though, we still do have some declining bird populations. A lot of our species are still in danger and are still in peril, which brings me to our topic today. So I'm really glad that you tuned in because, like I said, there's a whole lot that you can do. But I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, too. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, but you shouldn't feel like you need to do all of those things. Maybe pick one or two things that are pertinent to you that you think that you can do and start there. Maybe it's a couple things that you can do with your kids. Maybe it's a couple things you can do without your kids. That's up to you. All right, so I'm going to dive right in. All right. So those of you who are in the know probably have already heard about keeping your cats indoors. All right. So most of you probably already know about keeping your cats indoors. It's not only safer for the birds, but it's also safer for the cats. So that is definitely a biggie, and we always encourage that here at Tri-State. One of the other great ones is reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I know that we've talked about that. It's been ground into your head since you were a kid. But the less plastic waste that we have, the better that is not only for the birds, but other wildlife and for ourselves. So that's a really great and really super easy one. And if you are out and about and you see litter and you see trash, take a few seconds and pick it up because our birds will surely thank you for it. One of the other topics that you hear a lot about, and there's a ton of resources, is keeping a responsible yard. So you want to supply things that the birds need, like food and water, nesting sites. All those things are really important. And you can actually get your yard certified as a certified wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Foundation. One of the important things, though, is making sure that if you do have things like that, like bird baths and bird houses, that you're keeping them clean because we don't want to spread diseases or germs around. There are plenty of things that you can do as far as planting native plants to provide food. So you want your yard to be clean as far as your bird boxes and bird baths, but you don't want your yard to be clean as far as natural things are concerned. So things like these leaves that I have here in this box, this is actually great habitat. The birds love to dig and pick through here, and they find all kinds of insects to eat, and they need those for their babies. So leave the leaves. Let your yard be a little bit messy if you can, because the birds, again, will certainly appreciate it. One of the other things you can do as far as keeping a responsible yard is going to be to eliminate hazards. We're talking about like chemicals, lawn chemicals, if you have oil maybe sitting out anywhere that they could get into. Also places where birds could potentially get trapped, think cages or wire, strings, those sorts of things are all easily eliminated in most people's yards. And it's a great way to start your little project of helping the birds. So now I'm going to dive into some of the lesser known things. So we have kind of a little station here for each thing so you can learn a little bit more about them. And I'm going to start here with poisons that we people, humans, put into the environment. So the first thing, and the Pennsylvania Game Commission was wonderful enough to donate this giant poster for us, is called lead. And you guys have probably heard of that. And you think, well, nobody uses lead anymore because we know that it's dangerous, right? Well, unfortunately, they do still use lead in hunting. So hunting gear and then also in fishing gear. So what you can do as a concerned person about this is to write your representatives and write your senators and tell them that you don't support that and you don't think that's a good idea. One of the other things is if you happen to be a hunter or a fisherman, you can see down here that there are some recommendations, and that is to use non-leaded ammunition or to use non-lead fishing tackle if you're a fisherman, and also if you do hunt, to bury the gut pile so that birds can't get into it. So that is the lead section. One of the other things that we see here a lot, unfortunately, at Tri-State is rodent poisoning, so rat poison. People will put rat poison out because they have a mice problem. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is that red-tailed hawk goes and eats that mouse that's poisoned. And unfortunately, that then poisons the hawk. And we do see it here a lot at Tri-State. And sometimes we can help those birds and we can get them better. And sometimes they're just too far gone. It's a really sad thing to see. And unfortunately, too, when you do that, if that bird is taken out of the ecosystem and he doesn't make it, then you have the potential of thousands of mice that bird would have caught over his lifetime that are gone. So it's a vicious cycle when you use rat poison. So we really, really, truly, strongly discourage that. It is definitely not good for the birds. The next one I'm going to talk about, and this is a great little demonstration here at Tri-State, is window impacts. And window impacts, we get a lot of questions and we get a lot of birds here at Tri-State who have suffered from impacts. So I'm going to start by saying that windows are man-made. Birds just can't see them, and they can't understand. They did not evolve with windows. It's a man-made thing. It's solid, but it's clear, and they just can't understand that, and they often just can't even see it. We used to think back in the day that you could put up like 1 or 2 hawk stickers on your patio window, and that would be enough to keep the birds from flying into it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We found that birds were still coming in with impact injuries, and we thought, well, why is that? What's going on? So they actually amazingly did research about it at some universities, and they found that the pattern has to be really dense so that the birds know not to go through there. So you can see on this window here at Tri-State, we have these little clear dots, and the little dots are actually helping the birds to see on the window that, hey, there's something here and I shouldn't fly through this section. And those dots are approximately 2 to 4 inches apart because that's what the research says you need so that the birds can see the window. So dense patterns are really important. There are all kinds of ways that you can do this. You can buy these little stickers and do the dots like we have. There's also American Bird Conservancy has a tape that is a long string that you can put those on your windows. You can buy outdoor curtains online. Regular old window screens, surprisingly enough, are also great. They help if a bird does impact the window because it's a little bit softer. It has some give to it that hopefully they don't injure themselves. And also, screens have a little bit of density to them. The birds can actually see them, so it helps to repel them, to keep them away from the windows in the first place. And there's lots and lots of homemade options too. I know one of my friends has a beautiful display outside of her window with branches, and that she was able to mount them outside the window. And not only does she not have birds that hit the window anymore, but the birds actually fly right up and sit in the branches right next to the window. And that is beautiful, and it's wonderful to see. So you get great bird watching in that way too. Important to note too is if you do have feeders on your property, aside from keeping them clean, it's also really important that you place your feeders in the correct spot. So if a feeder is within 3 feet of your window, if a bird does lift up off of that window and take flight, or up off of that feeder, and take flight, if they hit your window, hopefully they won't have enough of a momentum by that point that they won't hurt themselves. So within 3 feet of your window is important, or greater than 30 feet. But even if your feeder is greater than 30 feet, you still want to treat your windows. So here's the example of the beautiful branches on the windows too, and some other things that you can do, some DIY solutions. So feeder placement's really important. So you want to avoid that deadly zone, which is between 3 feet and 30 feet. And you really should treat your windows if you plan to have a feeder on your property. All right, the next topic is super simple, and it should be one that hopefully everyone can do, and that is drinking bird-friendly coffee. So you may not have even ever heard of bird-friendly coffee, And it's actually a great program that the Smithsonian put on. And you can actually check out their website for more details, and also retailers where you can buy bird-friendly coffee if you are interested in doing this. But basically what it does is the coffee is actually grown in the rainforest. So the coffee trees are grown and cultivated right underneath the regular rainforest trees. And that's super important because you have birds like this beautiful scarlet tanager we have here, and he actually lives up here in the summertime, but then he goes to South America in the wintertime. And when he gets down there, sometimes they find that their whole entire home is gone because it's been cut down. And they do actually cut down rainforest trees in order to grow coffee. So one of the super simple, greatest, easiest things that you can do is to drink bird-friendly coffee. Not only do they grow it underneath the rainforest trees, but they also don't use any insecticides or pesticides or anything like that. So it is great all around for the environment and for our birds if you happen to have a coffee addiction. Moving to the next topic, this is covering trash, and specifically specific trash. So we already talked about reduce, reuse, recycle, but we actually have specific things that we see here regularly at Tri-State that are hazardous to the birds. So those tend to be things that are entrapment issues. So we're talking here about particularly strings. So this is actually an oriole nest here in this cup that was built out of fishing string. We have other items here that were taken off of birds. This came from a gull. This is a soccer net. This came from a great horned owl. So soccer nets are definitely a big one. If you have soccer nets and they're not in use, please do put them away. We see birds, unfortunately, that get stuck in there pretty often. They just don't realize that it's there, or they're busy doing their own thing and they don't see it. And once they get stuck in it, it's really difficult for them to get back out because it gets trapped on their feathers. Fishing string obviously is a big one. So if you do see that when you're out and about on your walks or your hikes, definitely pick that up. Another one that we see a lot as far as string is concerned are these balloon strings. So releasing balloons is definitely frowned upon, and that's another great thing that you can do if you want to help the birds. If you see things on the news where they're glorifying or they're saying, oh yeah, this is so great, we have this beautiful memorial and we're releasing these balloons, write to that news station and tell them, hey, this isn't actually really good for the environment, and please don't promote it, because that just encourages more people to do it. We have other things here too, like our netting. This is all stuff that was trash that was just picked up out and about. So all these things are definitely particularly dangerous to birds. One of the other things as far as trash is concerned that's especially dangerous that we see here at Tri-State a lot is sticky traps. So sticky traps can be used either for insects or sometimes for rodents too. They can be hanging like in a barn for flies, or they can be on the ground for mice and that sort of thing. Those things are actually super dangerous to the birds. A lot of times they see the insects on there and they think, oh great, this is a smorgasbord and I'm just going to go have my fill. And they fly up there to try and get the insects off, but then they end up getting stuck on the sticky tape too. If you do find a bird like that, please don't try to remove it yourselves. We actually have a very special process that we do here at Tri-State so that we can get them off safely without more damage to them. So if you find them, definitely contact us right away, and we will take them off of the trap when they get here. The last topic that I want to talk about is a little bit of a challenge in that it's hard to describe. So it's actually habituation. So the easiest way that I can sum that up is to keep the wild in wildlife. So you can see here at Tri-State, we have this big, beautiful area out here. And there are all kinds of birds. And I hope at the beginning of the video, hopefully you could have heard some of the birds that are out here. But there are all kinds of birds going about their own business out here every day. So they're out there looking for food. They're out there building their nests and feeding their babies and trying to keep themselves clean, because we know that oil spills are a problem, right? So we know that dirty feathers are a problem. So birds spend a lot of time just trying to keep themselves clean. All of these things are going on right outside your door. So when you leave your house, it's really important that you know that there are wild animals out there, other than just birds too, who are doing things that they need to do to survive. So thinking about that, being cognizant of that is really important. So you want to enjoy from a distance. If you have maybe a great camera and you want to go out and take some photos, maybe it's a really good excuse to spend that money you've been wanting on that telephoto lens. Because if you can stay back a little bit further, you can see some amazing things that you would never have seen before. A pair of binoculars is wonderful too. I mean, maybe you'll see a 5-minute battle between an earthworm and a robin right in your own front yard. Or maybe you'll see a hawk in a stream taking a bath. There are all kinds of things out there that you wouldn't have seen. You would never even have known that that was possible or that they were out there doing those things if you were up close and personal. So habituation is a big one, and staying away, keeping your distance, but still loving them and enjoying our birds and our wildlife is super important. So a couple of examples that I wanted to talk about too as far as habituation and keeping the wild and wildlife is baby birds that are on the ground are often mistakenly brought to us as far as needing help. If you do find a bird that is injured or that's orphaned, please call us and we will try and walk you through how best to help that bird. But particularly, baby birds are actually meant to be on the ground for a little while. So if you find a baby bird on the ground that does have feathers on it and it's hopping around, it's probably a fledgling. And that's a natural period of a bird's life. You can think of them kind of like a toddler, that they learn to fly. So sometimes those birds don't necessarily need help, and it's best if they're raised in the wild. So that's something that you can do too to help birds, is to know when to help. One of the other things with habituation that we see sometimes is baby ducks that people like to feed. So they go to the park or the pond and they throw out bread for those guys. But really those birds should be eating their natural food. Bread is not a good food source for them. It's not very good nutrition. So it's really better for them to be out and about and doing their own thing. But that goes back again to my responsible yard. If you do want more birds in your yard and you do want to have them around and you do want them to have food to eat, which of course we all do, then you can plant native plants. Leave your yard a little bit messy. Leave some leaves around for the bugs to live in. Have a birdhouse. Make sure you keep it clean, though. That's super important. So there are things that you can do that you can help the birds without necessarily, doing the bad things or the things that maybe you shouldn't do. And it's important to point out that we've all done those things. So when I first had bird feeders in my yard, I never cleaned them. I didn't know you had to. I just thought you put the seed in it and then they ate it and that was great. I also never had my windows treated on my house. But once we learn better, then we know better and we can do better. So just like us here at Tri-State, it's super important that you keep learning. So we're constantly, like the thing with the windows over here, we're constantly learning that, hey, one hawk sticker on your window just doesn't work and we need more than that. So there's tons of research going on. We're learning new stuff every day, and it's important that you guys learn new stuff every day too. And you'll notice throughout my presentation today that I didn't say, well, I heard this from my neighbor, or I heard it from my great aunt Beth that whatever. It's important that you go to the right resources. So Tri-State is a great resource, but there's all kinds of other places. I already mentioned National Wildlife Foundation. I also mentioned American Bird Conservancy, about their bird tape, Audubon Society, Cornell Lab, back over here to our bird-friendly coffee, the Smithsonian. So this is the little logo that you want to look for on the bird-friendly habitat for the coffee. So this is actually Smithsonian certified. Their website has a lot more information that you can also learn about. So you definitely want to take the time to not only learn about these things, but to appreciate nature. So go out there and see what's out there. We've got great binoculars here, some more source books that you can learn a lot of different things out of, and spread the word. So tell your neighbor down the street or your great aunt Beth, hey, I learned this about birds today and I really appreciate them and I think it's great. And you should too, because the more people who care, the better off we're all going to be. So in conclusion, I just wanted to thank our presenting sponsor today, who is WSFS Bank, as well as all of Tri-State's other sponsors. And we have a lot, which is wonderful. And also, of course, you, our Facebook friends, for spreading the word and for caring and for tuning in today. It's super important that we all care, because if we all care, we can make a difference. So thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.